I realized something was off the second I blinked my eyes awake. That guest house by the shore, whitewashed walls, weathered pots, a kettle that whistled like it had gossip, was supposed to be full of chatter and morning routines. But instead it was hushed. Not peaceful, ominous. That's a special kind of wrong. I'm Marion, 68, retired librarian. I used to wrangle storytime at the local elementary school, making picture book pirates come alive for wide-eyed kids. Now I spend my afternoons painting landscapes, mostly crooked trees and angle of sun worries, and sipping hibiscus tea like a low-budget Monet. I'm not wealthy, but I have always tried to be generous, especially with my daughter Harper. She's the kind of girl I'd sneak her favorite cookies to at preschool. 3 weeks ago, I found myself waking here, in that pastel guest house, ready for what was supposed to be a simple seaside family getaway for my grandson's birthday. I offered to help pay. Harper handled booking the place and travel. I packed sunscreen, storybooks, extra socks, 2 pairs of reading glasses. One for the beach, one for bedtime, my sketchbook, even flavored nuts. I thought this would be lovely. A little escape filled with sandcastles, ice cream, and reading Goodnight Moon in a new place. Instead, the place was empty. No Harper bouncing into the room complaining about too many teas. No Eli fiddling around in his zip-up hoodie. No grandson giggling under blankets. Just silence. Birds outside squawking like they were trying to fill the void. I slid out of bed, stubbed my toe on a dresser, and glimpsed the state of the room. Their bags? Vanished. My tote? Gone too, the one I use for everything. It held my purse, ID, that sketchbook brimming with half-painted daisies, even my travel wallet. All of it gone. Barefoot and still dazed, I shuffled down the hallway and peered into the kids' room. It looked as if no toddler had ever crossed the threshold. Blankets tucked perfectly, not a toy out of place. That's when the panic set in. I hoofed it to the front desk in my robe and slippers and asked, voice quivery, if Harper had left a note for me. The clerk, poor soul, looked irritated and apologetic at exactly the same time. She clicked and tapped and said, they checked out 4 hours ago. I stared. My mind blanked. She turned the monitor toward me. There they were, Harper sturdy and cool with my tote slung over her shoulder. Eli behind with suitcase wheels clicking, my grandson skipping. Not panicked, not rushing. Not one backward glance. I returned to the room and dialed my phone, praying for even a scrap of reception. After a mini-eternity, a single message popped in. Take it easy, you're okay. That was all. No sorry. No call me. Just that. It felt like a hammer tap and a shrug all in one. I didn't cry, not then. Maybe I was too stunned. But I tucked that disbelief into my chest and straightened my spine with old librarian grit. I kept telling myself, if someone tries to shake you loose, maybe it's your moment to stand firm. My world tilted the moment I saw the security footage. I demanded to see it, trying not to tremble like a leaf in a storm. The inn staff didn't argue, even though I must have looked like I'd lost my marbles. They led me to a cramped room filled with monitor screens and the smell of stale air freshener. There she was, Harper, twirling that tote bag of mine nonchalantly over her shoulder. I'd bought that bag for myself when I turned 65. It's stitched in bold, looping cursive with my initials, like I was teaching the world who I was, one zipper pull at a time. Now that bag was marching out the front gate like it belonged to someone else. Eli followed behind, pushing the stroller just as steady as if we'd donned our usual routine. And my grandson, bright-eyed and swinging a balloon, was giggling and eager, oblivious to everything else. They looked like a family headed to a spa retreat, not one that left someone behind with no warning, no goodbye, no backward glance. I froze. The kind of freeze that creeps along your spine and lodges in your jaw. No tears, just a silent ache that clenched my heart. I stared until the clerk cleared her throat and offered me a chair and a cup of lukewarm tea. I took the tea, only because I'd spent decades knowing that a warm sip can do more than a kind word. I sat and replayed the video frame by tedious frame, hoping for some clue, maybe a hesitation, maybe a change of heart. But there was no hesitation, just purpose. That tote bag, every crayon of its canvas screamed me. Embroidered for my own comfort and use. I pictured every sketch I'd tucked inside, every coupon and ragged receipt I'd stuffed into its pockets. All gone now, riding away with the people who promised I was welcome. I closed my eyes and breathed out a rattled sigh. It reminded me of the time I nearly collapsed trying to wrangle 30 kindergartners through a fire drill in January. I'd survived chaos then. I could survive this too. When I looked at the clerk again, I managed, "Thank you." Even though my voice sounded like I'd swallowed gravel. I didn't flash my gratitude smile. Some moments demand gravity, not smiles. Back in the room, I needed air, so I walked to the window and cracked it open. The breeze rolled in salty and insistent. It carried gull cries and distant waves, mocking me with reminders of what just happened. They had gone without me. With the breeze came that nagging librarian instinct. I needed to know why. Was Harper in trouble? Was Eli panicking? Was there a reason that justified this bizarre vanishing act? Part of me thought maybe they'd mistaken guest house times, or thought I'd overslept. But seeing her stride so casually with my things, that idea evaporated. No confusion, no hurry, no sign she ever looked back. I sat on the bed and pulled out the remnants of my makeup kit. The small mirror, the eyeliner pencil that rarely stays straight, the corner of a pressed blush compact. I stared at my reflection, one eyebrow cocked like I always do when solving a puzzle, and thought, they've changed who I thought they were. There had to be a reason. And whatever it was, I decided I'd find it, one way or another. I retrieved exactly $40 I'd stashed inside my coat lining. Always travel clutching your coat for secret savings, bless it. That small sum paid for a bumpy old shuttle ride to the fancy beach resort next door, where I suspected I'd find my family. And wouldn't you know it, there they were, lounging, sipping smoothies that looked like fruit explosions in a cup. My grandson digging prints in the sand with that stick he'd been obsessed with. Harper stretched out on a chaise lounge, her hat half-tipped over her sunglasses, her cheeks sun-warmed, lips curved in a relaxed smile like she had nothing on her mind, except maybe what to order next. I approached her as calmly as morning dew on grass. No shouting. No wild gestures. I leaned on the railing by the pool and said, all measured and even, "You left me." She lifted her head and sighed deeply, like I'd interrupted her afternoon nap schedule, which she apparently expected to follow. Harper told me with perfect poise, "We needed a break from you." From me. Just like that. No apology. No softening. Just a casual dismissal like I was yesterday's newspaper. I didn't cry. I didn't give her an earful. I simply turned, walked away as cool as a cucumber, and let that sentence land deep in my bones. We needed a break from you. Those words cracked something inside me, like an old paintbrush snapped under pressure. I wandered down toward the beach cafe, where umbrellas dotted the sand and seagulls squabbled over dropped fries. The breeze was salty and persistent, like a reminder of what was already gone. It hit me that this moment wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding. It was choreography. They had orchestrated it. I took a seat on a weathered bench, across from a colorful smoothie stand played by a chatty vendor. I ordered a lemonade so tart it made my lips pucker. I watched my grandson build his sandcastle, oblivious to the emotional tsunami unfolding 100 feet away. The waves lapped gently as if offering a lullaby that I didn't deserve. With each sip of lemonade, I let the heat drain out of my body. Not from the sun but from betrayal. I felt my cheekbones tighten, my breath steadying. I thought about how I traveled with extra shoes, chargers, and even a small first aid kit, just in case. And yet, I'd been left unprepared for this kind of abandonment. That realization, logical, painful, ruminated like a persistent tune. But beneath that tune grew something sturdier, resolve. I finished the drink, shoved a 20 in my coat pocket, because street smarts never go out of style, and got to my feet. The sunshine still hit my back. The air still smelled like salt and promise. And in that moment I decided, this was their plan, but next was mine. I staggered back to the guest house, heart pounding like it was auditioning for a marathon. Finally, I got a sliver of signal, enough to check into my banking app. And there it was. Harper had gone on a spending spree with my emergency card. Spa packages that cost more than what I budget for a whole month. Boutique purchases marked with pretty ribbons and ocean motifs that I'd never authorize. The realization hit me like a dropped book on my bare foot. I'd never removed her as a secondary user. I'd set that up years ago when Eli lost his job. I thought I was helping them build credit. Instead, I was building a runway for them straight off the cliff. I rummaged my coat pocket like a squirrel hunting for nuts. No cash. No ID. Nothing. I felt unmoored, stranded. But there was one thing left that mattered. A gold pendant George gave me before he passed. Inscribed with a faint date I could barely read. I traced it with my finger, then tucked it into my palm. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I walked into the nearest jewelry shop, one that had postcards and costume pearls displayed like they were jewelry heirlooms. I slid the pendant across the counter. The clerk weighed it, tapped his calculator, and offered me $80. I didn't bargain. I'd taken less in library book sales. That $80 bought me a bus ticket to the ferry and a seat back to the mainland. Not a luxury journey, mind you, but enough to leave the coastline of betrayal behind for now. As I stood in line for the ferry, I looked down at my phone. It hovered at 15%. A sad little lifeline. I tucked it into my cardigan, closed my eyes, and let the cement of the situation settle in. They had taken not just my things but my sense of safety. And they'd done it with the smoothness of professionals. The ferry cut through gray, choppy water. The hull clattered beneath me, reminding me that life keeps moving, whether you're ready or not. I held onto the railing like it was the only thing still tethering me to the world I once knew. Sea spray kissed my face with briny resolve. When I got off the ferry, I realized something. They didn't just betray me. They triggered a shift. A pivot I hadn't known I needed. I wasn't just a forgettable passenger on this trip. I was the one steering the next part of my life. I folded one bill and the rest of the change into my coat. Then I bought myself a soda from the station kiosk. Vintage Coke in glass, almost fizzy enough to make me laugh. I didn't feel like laughing, but at least now I wasn't crying. I was just breathing. And I knew that's where the real work began. When I finally got home, it wasn't just that I was one gold pendant poorer. It was the sense that my world had been quietly unstitched. I opened my emergency drawer, the one hidden behind the late tax folder, clearly labeled utilities. Every single envelope was gone. The bills I carefully tucked away over the years for rainy day fixes, cleaned out. I walked through the house checking scrappy hiding spots. The keepsake tin, the bottom of cookie jars, gone. Every sock stuffed 20 and every stashed receipt, gone. That ugly truth sank in. Harper didn't just leave me behind. She'd been taking from me for months. Little bits here and there, pretty boutique purchases, juice buys, splurges on spa treatments, all charged to cards I never authorized, or to accounts she no longer had rightful access to. In that moment, I didn't crumble, I ignited. I gave myself a little mental pep talk. This is when old librarian Marion turns into firecracker Marion. First, I started listing items online. The baby rocker I never thought I'd pack away, even though my grandson had grown past it. The dining table we used only at holidays. My nice dishes, the ones for Christmas dinners, delicate and pricey, that had collected dust in the cabinet for years. Each for sale post felt like shedding someone else's expectations. Within hours, strangers began to show up. A young mom bought the rocker and wheeled it away with her toddler riding atop it. A couple wanted the table for their new apartment, said it would be their first family dinner. I pointed them to parking instructions and watched them drive off, feeling lighter by the second. I wasn't selling furniture. I was shedding memories that no longer fit. Books I'd hoped Harper would cherish? Gone. The dusty shelves that used to hold photo albums? Cleared. Part of me felt a pang of nostalgia, of sadness, but mostly I felt space. By evening, I had enough filled bins to form a small yard sale. I pitched signs around the neighborhood. Moving auction, everything must go. I didn't say it happened fast, but it did. Chairs, blankets, knickknacks, dishware, the kind of items that hold sweet memory, but only when they bore warmth, not bitterness. Once the clutter cleared, I listed the house for rent. I cleaned until the walls reflected daylight instead of stale memories. Then I packed a single suitcase with essentials and the box of letters and photos I'd held back. The one thing I still wanted to keep. I moved into a small one-bedroom above a coffee shop on the other side of town. It smelled of fresh espresso and morning chatter, rather than heartache. No forwarding address. No drawer of saved spells or maps or helpful snacks for nights I thought I might get lost. Just fresh paint, new light, and exactly the people I needed, caffeinated passersby and me beginning again. 2 weeks passed in a haze of fresh paint and new beginnings when Gwen called me. Her voice came through the phone, all teasing warmth. "They're on your porch. With luggage." I laughed harder than I had in weeks. Tea nearly spat out. Harper, Eli, and the little one were standing on my old front porch with suitcases, ringing my doorbell like they'd lost their map. Gwen, my savior across that stretch of turf, answered the bell. She didn't say much. Just that same soft truth. She doesn't live here anymore. Later that day, I was at the weekend flea market, perched behind a folding table piled with vintage hardcovers, mismatched teacups, and watercolor prints I'd painted. The white canopy flapped gently in the breeze, and I was halfway through a conversation about the perfect library cataloging system when I looked up. Harper was there. Her hair was pulled back, her face thinner than I remembered, and there was a wild apology in her eyes, like she'd walked into the wrong movie. We sat together under that canopy amid stalls of embroidered napkins and chipped pottery. She asked, voice small and rough, "You changed the locks. You left no trace. Why?" I leaned forward, keeping my voice steady, even though my throat clenched. I said, "You left me in another country. You drained my accounts. You filmed me just to mock afterward." I slid a plain envelope toward her. Inside were printouts. Every unauthorized spa charge, each boutique purchase, the video stills of me reclining unintentionally, and that photo of me resting, that someone posted with the callous caption, "Drama Queen Mom finally ditched." She stared at the envelope, her fingers trembling as she flipped through. I watched her watch herself being erased online. That still cut deeper than anything else. When she looked back up at me, eyes damp, I told her in that librarian voice I reserve for correcting overdue books. Not with malice but with clarity. "You don't live there anymore. You don't get to call me Mom when it's convenient." She tried to speak. Her mouth moved but nothing came out. I sat there for a moment, letting the words land like soft stones in a quiet pond. Around us, the flea market hustle continued. A kid giggled over a wind-up toy. A man tapped through comics looking for Sunday cash. I realized something in that pause. I didn't need her apology. I was no longer waiting on her to turn around. I turned myself into someone who didn't need that anymore. I stood, patted the top of my watercolor hat, and smiled gently. Not forgiving but not resentful either. I had moved on. And now so had she. I mailed a package the next day. No stamp of return address. Just intention. Inside was a small print of a park, the one I used to take my grandson to when he was just learning to skip stones. Green grass, a winding path lined with daisies, and that ancient wooden bench under the oak tree where we shared popsicles. Tucked beneath the print was a simple note. "You deserved better. Love, Grandma." That was it. My final olive branch. I carried that note in my heart like a lifeline. Then I stood by the mailbox, watching it carry that small piece of me into someone else's hands, vanishing into the post's green chute, and quietly closed that chapter. I didn't post about it. I didn't call Harper or Eli. I just began cleaning house in the literal and figurative sense. First, I deleted every family photo from my phone. Every snapshot of birthdays, beach days, my grandson blowing out candles. My phone went from a memory box to a blank slate overnight. Next, I changed my number. I deleted old contacts, group texts, and even closed my social media accounts. Status. It's complicated, but not with anyone else. I set out of sight and disappeared like I'd always wanted to. No dramatic social media exits. No broadcast update or passive-aggressive posts about betrayal. I just vanished. The next morning, I woke up in my petite apartment above the coffee shop. No echoes of lost voices. Just the hum of the espresso machine downstairs, someone tapping keys on a laptop, sunlight drifting through sheer curtains. I sat at my small breakfast table, nursing my morning tea, often hibiscus, sometimes chamomile, and thought, I'm not drawing attention. I'm drawing breath. I didn't intend to punish Harper. I intended to protect what was left of me. Each small act of erasure was less erasing her and more reclaiming myself. My world shrank to essentials: 2 mismatched mugs I bought at a flea market, a journal for my scribbled watercolor plans, a shelf with books that made me smile, and one small wooden box where I kept my pendant's imprint and that printed park photo. Because memory isn't just in photographs. It lives in the heart and in quiet, meaningful gestures. Now I live a bit quieter, yes, but also clearer, unanchored by old expectations. I have new routines. A morning's walk to the corner deli for fresh-baked scones. Afternoons spent chatting with neighbors over shared lemonade. and evenings curled up with a novel that isn't stained by heartbreak. I'm not waiting for anything or anyone. I've crafted my exit, not with anger, but with the unshakable calm of someone who's finally allowed herself to stay. 1 year to the day since I woke up in that empty guest house, I stood behind the front table of my own little gallery. Marion's Finds. The sign is hand-painted, crooked on the edges, sure, but it's mine. Just like the space. It's not big. A pop-up gallery on the ground floor of an old bakery, with creaky floors that smell faintly of cinnamon and sea salt. I use the display window to hang 3 new watercolors every week. Sometimes landscapes, sometimes still life. Once I painted an entire series of teacups. There are no family portraits in sight. No echo of Harper's favorite beach photo. No framed school pictures of my grandson. No polite smiles frozen in time. Just me. Me and my watercolors and the music I play off a dusty speaker. Jazz in the morning, bluegrass on Saturdays. Locals wander in and out. Some chat. Some buy. Some just nod and linger. And that's enough. I kept my life small on purpose. Clean. No clutter of drama. I still get calls from unknown numbers I never answer. I assume some of them are Harper. I don't need to know. Some nights I still think about my grandson. I picture him with a growth spurt. Maybe wearing little sneakers he picked himself or carrying a backpack full of science books. I wonder if he remembers the sound of my voice. If he's forgotten the way I used to hum while unpacking puzzles for him on rainy afternoons. But I don't miss Harper. I miss who I thought she was. The daughter who cried when I read her favorite bedtime book too softly. Who once begged me to help her build a cardboard castle in the living room. That daughter doesn't exist anymore. The real one walked away with a tote full of lies and a phone full of footage she thought was funny. I stopped needing closure around the time I stopped checking my voicemail. I realized closure is just another word for waiting on someone else to say the right thing. Peace doesn't come from apology. It comes from boundaries. Mine are made of paint and pine and the locks on my new apartment door. Every night, I lock up the gallery and walk home with nothing but my sketchpad and a travel mug of tea. Sometimes it's lavender. Sometimes peppermint. Always hot. My place is 5 blocks away, up 2 flights of stairs that creak loud enough to scare off bad intentions. I keep the lights low, the fridge full, and the radio tuned to the late-night show hosted by a man with a voice like melted honey. I used to think I needed my family to feel whole. But what I really needed was this. Space to paint. Room to breathe. Freedom to choose who gets access to me. Harper lost a mother. Eli lost the hand that fed him more times than I can count. And my grandson? Well, one day he'll wonder. That part's not mine to write. But I know one thing for certain. I'm not the one who lost everything. They are.
Share your thoughts in the comments. What's one item from your past you'd never sell, no matter what? If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.